Negotiations between the federal government and organized labor on the proposed new national minimum wage of 48,000 naira is set to resume. There are indications that the government may increase the proposed amount. The chairman of the tripartite committee on national minimum wage, Alhaji Bukar Guni, invited labor leaders to continue negotiations on May 21st of 2024. Now, this invitation followed the workout of Nigeria Labour Congress, NLC, and Trade Union Congress, TUC, leaders from the negotiation committee due to the government's offer. NLC President Joa Jore insisted on a minimum wage of 615,000 naira, blaming the government and the organized private sector for the breakdown in negotiations. The Director General of the Nigeria Employers Consultative Association, NECA, Adewale Smith Oyeridin, urged the unions to reconsider their position and return to the negotiation table. And now joining us in the news now to discuss this further is Mohammed Abdullahi. He's a public relations analyst and he joins me via video chat. A very good morning to you, Mohammed. Let's get started very quickly. The NLC TUC worked out of the initial negotiations due to the government's proposed minimum wage of 48,000 naira, which is far below their demand of 615,000 naira. I need to make that clear. So as negotiations are set to resume, what do you think are the main, sticking points that they need to be addressed for both parties to reach a consensus, and how can these be effectively navigated?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Nigerians. I think, to be quite honest, the government is actually not serious with the proposal of 48,000. To put that in context, I want to drag us back to 1991 when Nigeria had actually 250 naira as its minimum wage. As at then, the dollar to naira is actually 8 naira. $1 equals 8 naira. So if you divide that, you have about $31 as our minimum wage. If you drag to 2000, the minimum wage was 5,500, and the exchange rate was about 85 naira then. So it means it was about $65. 2011, it was 19,000. And then the dollar averagely was about 150. So we had a 126. If you see the trajectory, it's like, the minimum wage is increasing. And if you get back to 2019, when the current 30,000, even though most of the states are actually not paying, it's only the federal government that's paying. The average exchange rate, before now used to be 300, 350, and we have like $100, as part of our minimum wage. But now, 48,000 naira, you have the exchange rate to be about at least, average of 1,300, which means we have $37. In fact, we are actually going back to 1991 in terms of the minimum wage. Instead of increase in terms of inflation of what workers are facing, it's like we are actually going back to 1991 from $100 minimum wage to $37. If you look at the exchange rate, I think that's extremely unfair on workers. If you look at the inflation rate and, the cost of living at the moment in Nigeria, come on. I think this is really not fair. And the government, I will advise, need to put something very tangible on the table in order to get the labor unions to talk again. If not, this is really not a negotiation at all. This is my own opinion. I don't speak for the labor, but I think, seriously, we are not making a headway with a $37 minimum wage at this moment with regards to...
So how then can they come to a consensus? How can they come to an agreement where they're able to navigate both sides and come to a point that is agreeable or acceptable on both ends?
What is acceptable, at least, is the fact that, like I mentioned earlier, at least from $100, talking about the exchange rate, we need to move far above. At least perhaps maybe a $150 or a $200 at this moment will perhaps cushion the effect of what workers go through in terms of transportation, rent, feeding, and so on and so forth. And perhaps labor will also be able to shift ground from the 650,000 that they are demanding, to meet, the government at halfway. But I think 48,000 is a no-go area at the moment. I am very sure labor will not agree to this in any way.
Right. The DG of NECA has urged the unions to reconsider the position and return to the negotiation table, right? And how crucial is the role of an organized private sector in these negotiations? Because we know organized private sector, as far as I know, an entry-level salary is between 120, 150 marker, right? So, and what promises or compromises or contributions could they make to help bridge the gap between the government's offer and the union's demands?
Yes, I think what is important for the private sector is that very many, like you mentioned, perhaps even in the time past, have been paying perhaps even above wage. But it's still very sad that even the state government are unable to pay the 30,000 minimum wage at the moment. You understand? So I think what is really important is not the private sector, because perhaps they have been meeting these obligations even before that. But I think what is most important is for government of the day, both the federal government and the state government, to find ways of, getting funds in order to, be able to pay the agreeable minimum wage as at when due. And how do they do this? I think that is what the question should be. The question should be that we need to cut a whole lot of costs in terms of governance. You understand? A governor perhaps having there are reports of some governors having 100 media aides, and so on and so forth. What do you need that for? Perhaps even the president having 50-something ministers. In the cabinet. What is the essence? So we
special
need
assistants, special advisors, special assistant, technical advisors.
Yes. So you need a lot of cutting cost measures.